Slow Mesh, week 1, John Reed, Jesse Simonton. We finally had some football this past weekend. It was just a little appetizer. We get us a main course here over the next couple of days. Jesse, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. We hit that intro like a pop pass. You know, we didn't fumble this one. That was a straight down the middle, tight end, first down.
That's right. Last week was a little rough, but I told you it's football season now. I'm ready to go. I got the preseason out of me. Let's get it. Congrats to you, Surrender Cobra on Substack. Get you a newsletter if you like the podcast. If you're listening to this right now, watching this right now on YouTube, go and subscribe. You can subscribe for free to follow Jesse's work. Congrats on that, brother. I'm sure that was a big relief for you, kind of just getting that out there.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's been some time behind the scenes, doing my research, doing my work, and had to see if the fingers would still work a little bit. And they do, apparently, because it's pretty long. So you can take the whole week to read this first one because it's pretty meaty. They won't all be that long, but I got all sorts of fun categories, and we'll go over some of that stuff here today on the show. But I appreciate the shout.
Let's go ahead. Let's go over a couple of them just from a table of contents standpoint. We don't have to get in and discuss them, but give me a table of contents real quick.
Yeah, well, first I just kind of have a rundown of, hey, man, this is the real world, and what have I been up to for 9 months, and kind of stuff I learned. And
you can skip that. You don't have to read through that. Just fast forward to the table. Yeah, get to the sports stuff. The
sports stuff is it's basically about why college football is awesome. That's kind of the intro there. Then I break it down. I think you and I both agree this season's going to be hell on wheels. I think it's going to be crazy. I think it's going to be chaotic. There's certainly no shortage of storylines, but I've kind of picked 10 of my favorite. And so again, we'll probably touch on some of those. So I got storylines. I got my own name and game team. So these are, I think, some of the best names, but also they got to be able to ball. And so everybody's got their All-American teams. I got my name and game team. I got Spice World, which is kind of my land of takes. I think you're going to kind of judge today on how maybe spicy some of those are. And I got plenty of other, categories too. I got, the Surrender Cobra fan bases. These are the fan bases. Doesn't necessarily mean your team's going to be good or bad. I think you're just going to be in for kind of a roller coaster season a little bit. And Tennessee may be kind of in that mix. And then I kind of have, Mr. Ranger's Neighborhood. I got a whole bunch of fun stuff. So go subscribe, check it out. And yeah, man.
All right. Well, shout out to you again. Go to Substack, look up Surrender Cobra, give it a subscribe, read the work. He put a lot of work into it. So go give it a click, but let's get to it. Week 0, big takeaways other than Avery Johnson's daddy and Avery Johnson's brother getting into a fight outside of the stadium in Dublin.
I don't know. Did they land more punches or did Avery land more throws in that, water-slogged first half? That was an ugly-ass first half. I think, thankfully, the second half, at least became a real football game. But like a lot of week 0, just kind of like our own fumbling a little bit a week ago, I think there were some kinks that need to be sorted out. It was a huge win for Iowa State. I mean, I thought Kansas State was going to win. Bill Conley's metrics kind of outlined that they, I think his post-game win expectancy was something to 4% or something for Kansas State. So they certainly kind of left a W out there on the field. But Iowa State, Rocco Bet, Matt Campbell, man, I mean, they win ugly. It's never pretty, but they win.
I don't know if I like the conference game, the top 25 matchup being in Dublin. I just feel like it's an ugly game. They were talking on TV about how the fireworks maybe caused the injury on the kickoff in the first quarter. It just feels too important. I don't like when the NFL sends division games to London. I don't want those either. I don't know what the answer is because clearly they're going to make it a priority. They're already, who is it next year? Is it North Carolina and Baylor going? Is that right?
North Carolina, TCU. They're running it back.
TCU. Sorry.
Running it back over there, yeah.
That one feels a little bit at least like less stakes because now, I'm not going to say Kansas State's eliminated by any means, but they are definitely behind the 8 ball, not only for an at-large bid, but, they're already down a game in the standings. Iowa State, on the other hand, Matt Campbell should feel pretty damn good because he, kind of has got back on track. Of course, last year had them in the Big 12 championship game, and now starts the year with the first marquee win, and they'll see a little bit of boost in the AP poll, I imagine, and now they kind of have some excitement. Their season's jump-started, but for Kansas State and Avery Johnson, that was brutal.
Well, there was some surrender Cobra moments, I think, for both those teams in the first half. You got Dylan out here fumbling, like you said, I think the opening punt or kickoff or whatever that was, and then immediately Iowa State makes that pitch on the goal line and it goes off the kid's helmet. There's another fumble. But kudos to Matt Campbell. I will say this, in a day and age where I still think too many coaches coach like chicken. I mean, just, coaching scared. For him, Iowa State's up 3. They could have kicked a field goal to go up 6, and he says no. Look, the math is what it is. If we get a first down here, we can kneel it instead of having to kick a field goal and then play defense. So Iowa State, wins by 3. And I think almost every Big 12 game this year is going to be decided between 3 to 6 points. I think that's just what that conference is going to look like.
Yeah, no, I thought that decision to go for the 4th down was the right choice, but I was proud seeing it because I feel like
that's what I'm saying. It's taken
coaches. Yeah, it's taken coaches so long to realize, hey, it's good to utilize all 4 of these downs. Going up 6 here really doesn't do us any good. Let's just try to go win it. So I was impressed, and then I'm glad they got rewarded with it. I didn't really have a rooting interest. I was a little confused. I didn't bet on the game, but I was a little confused before the game how everyone in the country decided they loved Kansas State in that situation. I guess the numbers, like you said, Bill Connolly, the projections had it. It looked like Kansas State still maybe won the game if you look at the plays that happened and should have won the game and whatnot. But the only thing that I thought going into that game was that I thought it was too much of a toss-up when you add in the travel and the elements and the uncertainty and the unusualness of Ireland. So I think for chaos, I was rooting for Iowa State, but I didn't really care. But even then, I was glad that Matt Campbell got his payoff with that 4th down call.
Well, I think I'll say this as someone who did lay some shekels on Kansas State and was wrong. I do think this is the day and the game that the Avery Johnson bubble has finally been burst. I'm not going to say the kid's overrated because who is the one that properly rates these people? That's a completely subjective deal. But I do think that he has absolutely been overexposed. And we may see a similar story, frankly, I think, John, with Nico later this year at UCLA. It's not necessarily that these kids are bad because you don't know, again, it's their own play. It's how overrated. I think you can list that for coaches much more so than the players themselves because we're the ones that make all this stuff up. But Avery Johnson was a 5-star who Kansas State has paid big money to not only, prioritize, which they did a year ago, over Will Howard, who went to Ohio State. But then this season, they kept him on the roster when I think some other teams kind of came sniffing. And he clearly has physical tools, but he has not put it all together. And that was a really poor first half. I know his numbers by the box score looked good at the end, but that's because 2 guys fell down for Iowa State, on 2 long touchdowns. So I think the shine has kind of worn off sunshine there.
Yeah, no, definitely. The box score, the stats looked a lot better than his actual performance did. I know it's just one game. I know it's week 0. This victory lap may age poorly, maybe even as quickly as Saturday. But in Knoxville, I was not in the camp of wanting really any of those Big 12 quarterbacks. I didn't find any of them to be super desirable. Avery Johnson, Rocco Beck,
Hoover.
Yeah, Hoover, Sawyer Robertson. I didn't really want any of those guys. I didn't think any of them were special. I thought all of them left a lot to be desired. So many people just looked at stats and said, gimme, gimme, gimme. But, just those 2, Avery Johnson and Rocco Becht, I watched both of them and said, I don't think we're missing anything in Knoxville with them. We'll see how the rest of the guys, and of course, we'll see on Saturday how Joey Aguilar performs for Tennessee. But I agree with what you said about Avery. Sunshine, the The shadows are poking out. The darkness is coming. It was dreary in Ireland. His daddy and brother rolled around in the mud, rolled around in puddles. Kind of felt bad for him, but, RIP to him. I don't think we'll have to worry about Kansas State. I'm the type of college football fan, Jesse, that they are now eliminated from my consciousness. Like I am off and on to someone else. I will not pay attention to Kansas State until they are like 5-1 or 6-1. Until then,
well, the thing is, we won't even have to talk about that. I mean, I only know this because Fox flashed the graphic a million times, but they basically played nobody. Their Big 12 schedule is completely backloaded, so they really will disappear, I think, from the consciousness basically until Halloween, and then it's like BYU and a bunch of these teams the last month of the season. So they'll get to kind of quietly hit the reset button, restart, and then we'll see you in 2 months.
Okay, well, I guess what I said, I guess that is true. We'll see them when they're 6-1. Maybe they'll pop back in there at that point. But my second takeaway from week 0 comes from that game as well. Why are teams still trying the toss at the goal line? The long developing, get to the outside. We're going to start 7-8 yards in the backfield. I would have thought that after watching Texas throw away a chance to win a national championship last year against Ohio State, that no team would have done that, especially so early in the season, while the entire country is watching.
We're still doing that toss, and we're still doing quarterback run on shotgun on 4th and short. It's just coaches, they're just stubborn, man. They are stubborn. They're stubborn mules.
I feel like everyone knew the play was going to be quarterback sweep to the right or left whenever, they had that 4th down and Avery Johnson's in the backfield pretty much by himself, if I remember correctly. Like, I feel like you have to have a running back there, maybe 2. You have to have some type of misdirection mixed in with the lead blocker there to give you a chance. But yeah, he got stuffed, and I was glad he got stuffed.
You know what Avery also is? He's kind of like, because people kept compared him to like Lamar Jackson speed and all this kind of stuff. And it wouldn't surprise me if he runs an insane, 4-something, 4.3, 40 whenever he does a combine. But he's kind of like those super fast little guys that go to the NFL at receiver, where they might be able to run super fast straight, but then they can't actually make contested catches or run any other routes. For Avery, he may run fast straight, but his vision is so terrible. He has no feel for any sort of hole. That doesn't even matter how damn fast he is, because he doesn't actually get to full speed by the time a defensive lineman's sitting in his lap.
Last takeaway from week 0 for me is that I'm happy that it looks like Hawaii is at least going to be competent. It was a rough 7 or 8 year stretch where Hawaii football was just dreadful. At least they beat Stanford. Maybe they'll be competent, and maybe we'll get some late night action that's worth watching with them. That
little lefty quarterback's fun. That little lefty quarterback's fun. And then, it's hard not to root for Timmy Chang. He inherited just a dumpster fire of all dumpster fires, where literally the Hawaii stadium had been condemned. That's how bad the whole program was down. So now that may be Stanford. So Andrew Luck, good luck.
It felt like the Hawaii's quarterback, maybe I misheard, because I was kind of watching on my phone and watching highlights, and I didn't piece together to get the game together until like the 3rd quarter. But I believe they said that Hawaii's quarterback threw like 125 touchdowns to only like 3 interceptions in high school. Did I hear that correctly when they were gassing him up, or am I?
I did not hear that.
Okay.
I did not hear that.
I heard that. I was like, surely that's not right.
He just beat Stanford on one leg. I mean, he could barely walk.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Shout out to him. All right, let's get to week 1. You said let's do it. What are your biggest storylines? I assume, are your storylines heading into this weekend or heading into the entire season, or both?
Well, the storylines that I have at Surrender Cobra for the entire season, but for you and I got some just week 1 storylines. Some of them I hit on the broader kind of bigger picture stuff at the new Substack. But I know everyone's looking at Ohio State, Texas, obviously Archmania. That's going to be, I think, the biggest game of the weekend, no doubt, 1 versus 2. But I want to take our eyes before that game happens, John, I want to talk about Baylor Auburn.
Okay.
I mean,
Baylor Auburn.
This is a put up or shut up time for Hugh. I mean, it really is, because it's kind of like, what would you say you do here, Hugh Freeze? And he's been Auburn's is always weird and dumb, but the circus has just kind of, I think, reached the pinnacle this offseason. And this fall camp in particular. I mean, like, from the who's calling the plays to the three quarterbacks may play to the claiming all these fake national titles. Now there's actual real expectations at Auburn, because that roster, John, it's damn good. I mean, like, their receiver room is stacked with Coleman. Singleton's one of the top transfers in the country. The offensive line apparently could be the best they've had on the Plains in like a decade. Defense, we'll see. But it's all about, the quarterback with Jackson Arnold and what Hugh is going to kind of get out of this offense. And, it's not like nothing ever's gone wrong in Waco before, so good luck.
Yeah, I mean, it felt like Auburn had that roster. So everyone kept talking about last year as, they were hanging into those games and just losing tough, or the quarterback would sabotage them. So that does lead to the idea that if you get Jackson Arnold, despite, him getting benched at Oklahoma and, not really having a fair chance, it felt like at the back half of their season with all the injuries they dealt with at receiver and offensive line. But he should be an upgrade over what they had last year. So, like, if you add 2 and 2 together, you have the roster, you have a quarterback that should be a little better. That should equal more wins for Hugh Freeze. But it's a tough game one for them, I think, on the road at Baylor. A Baylor team that finished the regular season last year pretty hot. Aranda was set to be fired, and then they went on and reeled off a nice little win streak there. Was it 5 or 6 games they won at the end of the year? And
yeah, he
saved
Big 12
his job.
Billy Napier.
Yeah.
Big 12 Billy Napier.
Yeah. Won 6 in a row there, to get to 8-4 and kind of save his job and save his standing.
The problem with, I mean, frankly, Jackson Arnold obviously was put in a untenable position a year ago at Oklahoma with all the offensive line injuries, all the their entire receiver room basically was a mash unit. But it isn't exactly like he's elicited a lot of confidence from Hugh this offseason. The fact that Hugh openly was like, hey, we have told DJ Durkin and the defense to, like, take it easy on Jackson in practice so that we can get his confidence up before this game. That sure as hell isn't so. If that's true, that's okay. Then maybe don't say it. Just don't say that, because if you say it out loud, then it sounds terrible.
Well, when you say that to me, it just feels like they're a perfect match. And when I'm saying that from an outsider's perspective, that they're a perfect match, that means that they're pretty toxic, and that Auburn fan base is pretty toxic. Hugh Freeze is pretty toxic, and Jackson Arnold is kind of the perfect, ticking time bomb there, because he's lacking confidence. That Auburn football team should be lacking confidence because they couldn't close out and win games last year. That feels like a great match, which I think for Auburn and Auburn fans and their stability and their hopes, that means that match is just going to blow up and catch on fire at some point, maybe as early as week 1.
Well, I'll tell you this. I think one thing I may actually chart in this game, because of how absurd the whole play calling situation is, where Derek Nix, the guy who came over from Ole Miss, is allegedly going to maybe call first downs. And then I think the tight ends coach or running backs coach is calling third downs. And then Hugh has the authority to, overrule any play call. And then, Lane Kiffin's out here trolling. Well, who gets to call fourth downs? Who gets to call the good plays? And what's going to happen is, no matter what, Hugh, because of the way this has been set up publicly, can trash one of his either other play callers and or the quarterback. And in the plays that do work, he'll say that he overrode them and he called those plays. So I'm looking forward to however that plays out.
You need an ace in the hole. You need an ace in the hole. You need something to go to when things are going bad to look like it's going to be different. So you wait, they lose to Baylor, maybe they're 2-4, whatever, they're struggling a little bit. Then Hugh all of a sudden says, I'm taking over play calling duties. I'm taking the reins, and you hope that, like, you win enough down the stretch to make it look like you had saved the day and made the right decision. I feel like I was having flashbacks when you were talking about, though, playing video games. I'll take the first quarter, you take the second quarter. I'll take the offense, you take the defense. At some point, somebody's letting the other guy down. At some point, like, it's very rarely a perfect relationship. Only one time, me and my buddy AJ, when we'd play the show, I was great at pitching, he was great at hitting. It worked out. But in the football games and the basketball games, it never worked out. It never did.
That is a great analogy. That's a great, like, you just think about when you're a kid handing off that controller at the old NCAA, and then you're like, you're pissed off at your cousin or brother because you just led Virginia Tech on a touchdown, and then they give up one to Florida State the very next play, and you're like, what the hell, man?
Yeah, nope, it's tough. It very, very rarely works out. But okay, are you ready to say whether or not Auburn's going to win this game, or are you just most intrigued by it?
I'm most intrigued by it. I am also pretty fat, and we'll get to your gambling segment later in the show. I am intrigued that the line's Auburn 2.5. It is interesting to me that coming off the season that Baylor had, the fact that they return a lot. I mean, Sawyer Robinson, like you said, you didn't want him for Tennessee, but I do think he's probably one of the better quarterbacks in the Big 12. The fact that they kept him and Spavital, the OC, together, that was a big investment by Baylor. My guess is from the odds makers is that they think because of this Auburn offensive line and Auburn's defensive line with Falk and some of the other guys, they just think the Tigers are going to lean on them, and that they're going to be a little bit bigger, stronger, and maybe they're able to kind of not have to put the ball in Jackson Arnold's hands quite so much, and you kind of get out of there with a victory. 2.5 spread, interesting. I think Auburn needs to win this game, though. I'll say that.
Yeah, no, I mean, we talked about them being a ticking time bomb. If they lose this one, it could get ugly for Hugh there in a hurry. I still think there's some clear, SEC money, baked into that line. A casual fan sees that, and you almost always blindly take an SEC team, even if it's on the road. I don't have a pick on that. I don't have a lean. I know that I'm rooting for chaos at Auburn. I know I'm rooting for them to blow up and start calling Nick Saban sooner rather than later. That's what I want to see happen. I want to see things go poorly for them lose at Baylor, them lose at Oklahoma. Then all of a sudden we really start getting some Nick Saban calls out of Auburn.
That would be great. I think that phone call maybe dialing up a coach that's currently working in New Orleans right now, though. Mr. John Sumrall, I think he'll be on a speed dial if Hugh's looking at trouble by the end of September.
See, for a second, I thought you would say they just try to hire Lane again, call Lane again, beg him to come.
Now, that would be hilarious. All
right, your storyline number 2 of the weekend.
Well, number 2, I mean, which game would you rather discuss? Would you rather discuss Ohio State, Texas, or LSU, Clemson? Which one interests you more? And I'll tell you the storyline that I'm kind of centering on.
It's a fair question because both are obviously big-time games. I just don't know how to really talk about Ohio State. Like, I don't know how to get in and dive into them because, of course, national champions. It's kind of crazy that they're national champions, defending national champions that feel under the radar. Michigan last year, it made more sense, right, for them to be under the radar. Harbaugh was gone. A lot of that talent was gone. With Ohio State, that's not really the case. But the quarterback position is just such a question mark that, I think people are just in wait-and-see mode there. The rest of the teams should be really stacked. It just comes down to how they play. Whereas Clemson and LSU, for me, I mean, that's a game that we talk about toxic. We talk about, things blowing up. I think that one has much more fireworks. I don't think there'll be any big-time reactions in Columbus. I think if Ohio State loses that game, okay, maybe that just means the Arch Manning hype train is on the roll. If Ohio State does win and it's close, I don't think we'll have any overreactions one way or the other. I think down, for Clemson and LSU, that's going to be explosive one way or the other. Either Brian Kelly is a fraud and loses again, or Dabo, it was fool's gold, a false prophet. I think whoever loses that one is going to blow up regardless. So I'm more interested in LSU Clemson for that reason.
For that same reason, I am more interested in LSU Clemson too. I will just touch on, because I think you made a great point, and it's something that I echoed and kind of wrote about at Surrender Cobra, is that Ohio State, to me, I think the last national champion, which is actually not that long ago, but the last national champion that I thought was kind of this under the radar the very next season was 22 Georgia. Because, again, there was so many other weird storylines in college football that offseason that even though they were coming off a national title and then ended up winning again, they just weren't under-discussed. Ohio State might have the two best individual players in the sport in Caleb Downs and Jeremiah Smith, and yet they have so many other questions, whether it is at quarterback. Are we sure that, Matt, pencil neck Patricia is going to be able to be like a good defensive coordinator? Brian Hartline, is he actually calling plays? I mean, there are some real questions about the Buckeyes from a real, macro perspective that I think is interesting. I think you're right, though. I don't think there's going to be a ton of, overreaction, so to speak, depending on what happens against Texas, except for the fact if I think the Longhorns win and Arch looks good, then the hyperbole is just going to be off the train.
It's either going to be great for Arch or really bad for Arch. Like if he sets the world on fire, we're off and running. If he's really, really bad, then everyone's going to really dissect and discuss him all next week. But if the game's a normal game, I don't think we'll have too much to talk about.
The LSU Clemson dynamic, whether it's toxicity or whether it's just, I think there's going to be kind of some for LSU specifically. It's going to be did they hit on the portal? Did they actually go to the blackjack table and you beat the dealer and maybe would they split tens and then hit them both? I don't know, because if they didn't, if they crapped out, if all these transfer portal additions, Texas Tech has gotten a ton of media for all their portal additions, but nobody invested more than LSU. And we're going to find out if those pieces worked. All this brand new secondary, this former DVU, did they actually get it right? These new receivers that they brought in, did they get it right? This isn't a portal thing, but is Harold Perkins actually a good player? Did they get it right? This is year 4. Have they found a way to use him in the right spot? The
best player for like half of his freshman season, and then like Brian Kelly just couldn't figure out how to make it work after that.
No, I mean, they literally fired a defensive coordinator because he couldn't figure it out. Matt Howell said, now we don't. It's unclear if Blake Baker has figured out how to use them too. So, LSU. I think this is 6 in a row or 5 in a row. They haven't won the opener. Obviously, going to Clemson is a lot more difficult than playing even a Florida State or USC at a neutral site. But if they go into Death Valley and win, the hype machine on LSU is going to be off the charts. And then conversely, if they lose, obviously Brian Kelly, the stranglehold around his neck is going to get tighter. But Dabo is going to be out there puffing his chest, talking about that resurrection, until the sun goes home.
The line has slowly started to move a little bit. It's come down.
That.
There was some LSU money come in. It went from 4 to 3.5. So, the people, everyone I see is all over Clemson this season. Not so much in week 1 as much as just like, hey, this is a national champion favorite. This is a team that's going to be there in that Final Four, going to be in the championship game. A lot of love for them. I think if they lose this game at home, though, I think that would really draw that into question. And that's really what it comes down to for me is I don't really like either one of these coaches. I think I like watching both of them squirm. They are both squirmy weasels. So, if Brian Kelly loses, watching him squirm and watching LSU fans turn on him. If Dabo loses, watching everyone kind of look and say, maybe that Clemson run last year was a little fool's gold. Maybe they did have to hit a 6-yard field goal to avoid blowing a 17-point fourth-quarter lead to SMU. They wouldn't have made the playoff without that win. They would have been, 9-4, and all of a sudden everyone would talk differently about them. I think that comes into play if Dabo loses. So I am much more into that game and that storyline for that reason.
Last note here before I give you my third storyline for week one that I'm most interested in. Because you're the big gambling aficionado. You do well in that space. What do you think about this take? The loser of this game, so the loser of Clemson, LSU, that quarterback, so either Garrett Nussmeier or Klubnik, I think that is when you take the long shot flyer on their Heisman odds. Because I think their Heisman, whoever loses, their odds are gonna really dip. But for that team, both of those teams are still going to have playoff and championship expectations. And for those to come to fruition, you would need that quarterback to play at that high level. So you're getting a really good price on one of the favorites, but at a better odds if they lose. What do you think about that take?
I like it, but only from a team perspective. Like I think you could – I would rather probably make playoff odds on that team.
Okay. Fair enough.
So if LSU loses and they go to like plus 300 to make the playoff, like I think I'd rather take that, or Clemson if you can get them at like plus 180 to make the playoff. I think I'd rather ride that than, one of those guys at 30 to 40 to 1. Although I got to be honest, like I've not really ever successfully been able to pinpoint the Heisman race. Like I've never been able to really hone in on who's going to win or when to take them. That's just something that's always escaped me. Maybe it's a part of the Tennessee curse. One of my most formative years was Peyton getting screwed out of the Heisman by Charles Woodson. So maybe I'm just cursed to not understand or care about the Heisman. But I do like your logic, but only really from a team perspective.
No, that's you upped my play and added a play action to it, so you made it even better.
In 2014, one of the best bets I hit, I put some money on Ohio State in that same situation after they lost to Virginia Tech. Like you looked at the schedule and you could kind of project out like, hey, this team could still win the Big Ten, make the playoffs, sprinkle a little bit on the national championship. I think I had them at like 42 to 1 to win the championship that year. And I think I had them at like plus like 400 to make the playoff. So I think going back to that well there, and of course that was a 4-team playoff. It's much easier to make a 12-team playoff. So I kind of like the logic, but I just stay away from the Heisman stuff.
I gotcha. All right. Well, my last storyline, Notre Dame, Miami. Again, there's a ton of great games in week one. Obviously Bill Belichick playing against TCU, Coach Prime, Georgia Tech. I think, sneaky one Monday night. Everyone's hot on South Carolina. They better beat a Virginia Tech team that's going to be desperate, that's playing for Brent Pry. That coach, Brent Pry, is coaching for his life this year. But Notre Dame, Miami, I mean, this one's ripe with a bunch of storylines. Obviously, I've been critical of the Nigerian prince, Mr. Mario Cristofrod. But I am most interested in this one in the quarterback specifically. I think the word coming out of Notre Dame's camp was that Kenny McGlinchey was basically the better player than C.J. Carr in all the reporting from these insiders and folks who saw the practice. A lot of folks, nationally included, John, were predicting Kenny to win the job 12 hours before Notre Dame then came out and named C.J. Carr the starter. Now, C.J. Carr's former, 5-star recruit. How much of this is NIL related, and the fact that they have invested a lot, financially in C.J. over Kenny McGlinchey? If it doesn't work out, how quickly does Notre Dame pivot, knowing that they have Texas A&M in 2 weeks? They don't play next week, and then they play A&M. That's their season. These first two games are basically Notre Dame's season. The rest of their schedule outside of USC is pretty cake. So I'm pretty fascinated how that plays out. And then on the other side, Miami, what Carson Beck are we getting? Are we getting the Carson Beck that was seeing ghosts last year at Georgia? Or are we getting the one, in 2023 that looked like a potential top 5 pick, throwing to Bowers and Vlad McConkey?
If anything, I can just say you're guaranteed to be a huge downgrade. Carson Beck, coming in there, replacing Cam Ward, future superstar and, Super Bowl winning quarterback. Probably should have won the Heisman last year. And if they would have let him in, probably would have won the national championship. So I do think it'll be a huge downgrade from Cam Ward to Carson Beck. But no, I think, kind of to transition into my top 5 favorite picks that I'll be playing this weekend, gambling wise, I think you'll see on the Notre Dame side, I got a buddy who's kind of connected at Notre Dame, and he says that despite their success last year, they were really ready to get a new quarterback in there that you could actually run an offense with. Because, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors and just a lot of hey, run the ball, hey, battering ram, hey, we can't really do anything dynamic with Riley Leonard. So I think whether it's Carr or the other guy, I think you'll see them actually try to run an offense now. So I'm excited to watch Notre Dame do that.
Well, so on that point, I literally dubbed the Notre Dame offense last year, and I think I will continue to use it until I see them actually let C.J. Carr or Kenny throw the ball. I mean, it is the pickleball offense. It is nothing but just staying in the kitchen, tap, 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 dink, dunk, dink, dunk, dink, dunk, dink, dunk. And Jeremiah Love's awesome, and that offensive line's great. But Notre Dame actually has some receivers this year, so they ought to use them. And I think you're gonna have to score on Miami. Miami's secondary is completely rebuilt. That offense, Sheldon Dawson, they got some playmakers too. So let's see it.
I'm leaning towards the over 50.5 in the Notre Dame Miami game because I do think the offense on both sides will be able to move the ball. Agree or disagree?
Fade or tail?
Yeah, fade or tail. Feel free to fade. It's fine if you want to fade. Don't let me pressure you.
No.
You don't seem sold.
I'm going to tail that pick because I am not scared. I am not a believer that suddenly Miami's retooled secondary is ready just to lock folks down.
Remind me or tell me I'm an idiot whenever I watch that Notre Dame offense and it's still just dink dunk though, and I got fooled, and it wasn't just a Riley Leonard problem, it was just a philosophy problem, and Marcus Freeman just wants to play that way. Or tell me I'm an idiot, Saturday if that ends up working out. I like Toledo plus 8 going to play Kentucky.
This is a hammer tail. That's one of my we're teasing each other's work here now when we go to my Spice World. That was one of my least spicy takes, but I got Toledo beating Kentucky in week 1.
Okay, well, there you go. Sprinkle a little bit. Throw a little salt there on the money line as well. Okay, so Toledo plus 8. All right, this is just a play. I saw sometimes I like to just compare. I like to go in. I look at Bill Connolly's SP Plus, the biggest gap. Sometimes it's just a blind follow. So this is just a play there with taking Temple UMass over 49.5. His metrics have it being closer to 60 points. So I'll ride with that. I got no analysis here.
You know what? In Conley, we trust. He does say his picks are not a betting metric, but
damn it, they will be for me in game 1.
They're certainly used as much. So I'll say fade on this one. I'll go fade on this one.
You know what? Probably a smart move. That way you don't have to pay attention to Temple UMass. And then my last one, I do like Tennessee plus or minus 13.5 on Saturday against Syracuse. I don't think Syracuse is going to have the firepower to score more than really 14 points, 17 points against Tennessee, and I think Tennessee can get to at least 31 points. So if I don't think you're getting over 17, I think Tennessee's getting to 31. That means I like 13.5. I don't think it'll be as bad as what Tennessee versus NC State was last year, and that game was, it's funny to say that about a game that was 51-10. I think it'll be a little bit closer than that, and I thought North Carolina State was a little bit closer than the final score said. But it was still just that SEC physical domination. I do think Tennessee in the trenches is going to be a lot better than Syracuse, and I think Tennessee's got the type of run game and the type of pass rush that you don't want to fall behind in because it just gets worse and worse as it goes on. So give me Tennessee minus 13.5.
I'm gonna tail this one. I think that I'm in agreement with you, lockstep. I think there's a couple other side elements to this as well. I think Syracuse is really going to miss Kyle McCord. And I think the fact that, Fran Brown picked a starting quarterback in the spring and then said, oh, no, we're going to go back, and go to the transfer portal and then get, Steve Angeli from Notre Dame. It may be peanut butter and jelly later this season against the ACC teams, but it's not going to be like that against Tennessee's defensive line. And I also think, frankly, whether it's Joey Aguilar or just the rest of that offense, I think Heupel wants to kind of flex and say, hey, I still have something.
Well, that's the hope.
And
that's the hope
yeah.
is that he takes this offseason seriously. I don't know if he's ready to fully embrace his morph into a defensive coach, just ground you and pound you and win low-scoring games. I do think deep down he's always liked blowing teams out. He always prefers to kind of put the pedal to the metal, especially early in the season as you're trying to figure things out. So, yeah, I think Tennessee and Josh Heupel's made a killing over the last 4 years on blowing inferior teams out. I think that's what we're headed for on Saturday.
And it's not like he honestly has to kind of unload the bag of tools. He can still keep some little tricks for Georgia, in a couple weeks. It's more about just, hey, get the tempo humming, get going downhill, and then you get those wide splits and you hit the deep overs when the defense starts sucking down. So, yeah, I'm in agreement there. Good. Some good picks.
Plus, I think that, I know it's a neutral site, but like it's in Atlanta, 2.5 hours, 3 hours away from Tennessee's campus. I think you'll have a lot of Tennessee fans there. It's essentially a home game as far as I'm concerned.
All right, you ready for my Spice World takes?
Give me your Spice World takes. I'll hit a couple of listener questions, then we'll get out of here.
Sounds good. All right. So this is kind of I'll start with a little preamble. 6 of the top 10 teams in the AP poll are starting first-year quarterbacks: Texas, okay, Ohio State, Georgia, Notre Dame, Oregon, and Alabama. My prediction or my spice take is this, and you can tell me how spicy it is. I think one of Julian Sayin, Gunnar Stockton, Dante Moore, or Ty Simpson, 3 of whom were former 5-stars, Gunnar being the lone 4-star of that group. But I think one of those guys cedes their starting job by the end of September. I could have included Notre Dame in this with C.J. Carr, but I just think the fact that job was so open, it's not going to happen. So I think one of Julian Sayin, Gunnar Stockton, Dante Moore, or Ty Simpson is going to get benched by the end of September, and their backup takes over.
It's burning my mouth a little bit, but it's really just flavor. I drink some water, okay. I'm fine. My eyes aren't watering or anything because Ty Simpson, I think, is the easy one to kind of point to there. Like I just think that if they struggle at all, and they could even be winning and struggling there, because that was another quarterback battle that kind of went late. So I think it happens. I agree with you. And it didn't make my eyes water or nothing though. It just made me go, need some water.
Okay. Now I already told you last week that I have Texas A&M and Ole Miss in the playoff. I think that's fairly spicy.
Yeah.
and Oregon missing the playoff. Sticking in the Big Ten though. Everybody keeps talking about Indiana. Everybody keeps talking about Illinois. Who's going to be, the next, come from behind team that, makes this rags to riches rise? Well, how about the old tradition, the old blue blood kind of comes back into the shine a little bit. I don't have them in the playoff, but I do think USC, I think what they've done defensively are going to be a lot better this year. So I got the USC Trojans finishing, which went 2-5 in conference games a year ago in one-score conference games, finishes higher than Michigan, Indiana, and Illinois in the Big Ten.
I thought you were about to pick Iowa. I thought that was headed to Iowa until you said blue blood. And I was like, okay, he's not talking about Iowa.
Martin Gronowski's gotten way too much love from me. But I got USC. But USC's been, in a lot of places, is picked to finish even from the league like 6th and 10th in the Big Ten. I got them finishing in the top 3 or 4.
So you got them in the playoff?
No, so I don't, because I only had 2 big teams in the playoff.
Yeah. Okay. I'll give it a 6 out of 10 on the spicy level to finish ahead of all of them. I would have maybe gone higher, but I read an article earlier today that was talking about how USC is finally all pulling in the same direction, how everyone's on the same page, and it was trying to really sell them. So maybe if you'd have caught me yesterday, I'd have been like, whoa, USC, but I already got primed for it a little bit. 6 out of 10, though.
Okay, all right. I'll save my spiciest one here for last. But here's another good one. Because I got some different coach firing ones and whatever, so I'll save that one for last. All right. Desmond Williams. Oh, excuse me. After being unranked, every year we know that there's a bunch of teams that start the season unranked that finish the season ranked. I think these 5 teams all finish the season in the top 25. One of them I'm a little bit worried about already because of week 0.
Oh no!
I'll name these 5 anyways.
Hope it's not Stanford.
No.
Utah. Okay. All right.
Louisville.
Okay.
Those are 2 teams in my playoff predictions piece. I also have Tulane. I think John Sumrall. I think they're going to be one of the best G6 teams. Baylor beat Auburn. That's a hell of a good start. You beat Auburn this weekend. That's a good start. And then my concerning team, they did win, but it was ugly. UNLV. The fighting Dan Mullins.
You know what? It's a 9 out of 10 on the spicy level after I saw what Dan Mullen had that defense looking like. If you could tell me they finished in the top 25, something's really gone right for them. So that one's 9 out of 10. I've broken out the milk. I've got a wet, damp towel, and I'm wiping the sweat off of my bald head.
All right. Well, this is last one here.
It hurts my heart. I feel like Dan Mullen clutching my heart, just sitting there watching that defense play. No thanks.
Well, you know that might have been a Carolina pepper. We're gonna go maybe a little ghost pepper here. All right, I don't think Joey McGuire is on the hot seat, but I do think that if Texas Tech, with all their financial backing, the fact that the billionaire Cody Campbell is writing all these checks, if they faceplant this season, if it goes wrong, there will be a coaching change in Lubbock. And man, oh man, what happens if Coach Prime ends up down in Texas?
Damn,
what if they poach Dion and bring him back to Texas, where he's grown, where he's basically lived, where he's got a ranch, where he's been all off season? Because now, thankfully, Dion's okay. Obviously, he did have the bladder cancer scare. But what if they fire him and they bring Coach Prime? I think that would be pretty crazy.
If you're Texas Tech, do you call Dion first or Nick Saban first? If money's not an issue there, money's not an issue there
first.
But like, what's the price tag? If you're really a billionaire and you're really willing to spend to buy yourself a seat at the table, like what number do you think they could offer and would offer where Nick Saban's like, fine, okay, I'll do it? Like $30 million? Could you see them saying, hey, here's $30 million, Saban. Here's $100 million for 3 years. Let's do it.
The Saban Texas Tech stuff, I think it fits like that's a hand in glove fit right there. The funniest one. I mean, the Dion one is a little tongue in cheek, but I do think it would be, with he doesn't want to go sit on kids' couches anyway, so you just keep James Blanchard, the awesome GM, and then you just pay for these kids, and Dion can pay for even better kids. The crazy one though, John, would be, because this actually could be realistic. What if they call Shane Beamer? What if they fire Joey McGuire and they're like, hey, we want to get Saban doesn't want to get out of retirement, whatever. Hey, Shane, would you want to leave the SEC because, hey, South Carolina may have a regression season, and do you want to go be the kings of the Big 12 where it's going to be easier to get to the playoff? We can give you even more money. I don't know.
To me, maybe it's not fair to Shane Beamer, but like to me, if I was a Texas Tech fan and we're trying to like flex that we're going to try to go for it, that's not really doing much for me. That's not really like getting me too fired up, unless like he goes like 11-1 this season, 10-2, which at that point he probably doesn't leave. So like either he does well enough to get your interest, then he stays, or he struggles a little bit, then you're not excited to get him. Is how it feels there. But like I am legit curious. Like, Texas Tech does seem hell bent on buying themselves a seat at the table. I feel like if you actually have this blank checkbook and you also have the blank checkbook to acquire players and they're willing to pay, what was it, $4 million, $5 million for that offensive lineman they signed? Like, if you're actually willing to do that, how desirable of a job would that be? Like, I would imagine it would get every coach at least somewhat interested in it. And I just, we saw with Nick Saban, he tried to warn everybody about the up-tempo offense. You remember that? 12 years ago. He was like, hey, don't do it. This is not going to end well for you guys. And then finally he's like, you know what? Fine, we'll do it. Spread them out. We're going to go fast. We're going to dominate the sport. And he tried to warn us about NIL, tried to warn us about pay for play. So it would be a nice, FU on the way out if he's like, I'm going to go here and I'm going to spend $100 million on this roster and we're going to win championships in Texas.
And he's never,
pretty funny.
As good as Nick is, and he is the GOAT, he's never not coached basically at a place where he could build the best roster. And at Texas Tech, he could build the best roster in the Big 12, hands down.
It's, I didn't really give you my storylines for the season, but like to me, Saban is maybe not number one, but like he's number two, just because I do think the fact
shadow.
he's leaving. Yeah, just the fact he's leaving the door open means that every coach that's on the hot seat is going to talk themselves into that. His price is just going to go up, and he's not going to deny it. And even if he does deny it, he lied in Miami, so no one's going to believe him. And I just think every coach that gets off to a bad start, or every coach that's even just middle of the road, if you're at a big time program, you'll have people, trying to get that started for him.
It would be a fascinating shadow for this entire season. That's for sure.
All right, real quick on the way out, let's hit some questions. AJ wants to know, dark horse candidate for SEC Offensive and Defensive Player of the Year. Do you have one?
I think off the top of my head, I would say, Defensive Player of the Year, I think most folks are going to vote like Dylan Stewart and Anthony Hill and those guys. But I think if my prediction that Alabama's defense is going to be top 5 again, and awesome, I could see like a Deontay Lawson, their linebacker, kind of sneaking in there as kind of the dark horse Defensive Player of the Year. For offensive, I think, what about Ahmad Hardy, running back, Missouri? He had a bajillion yards a year ago. He's one of the bigger transfers.
Joey Aguilar, maybe throw Joey Aguilar in there. Let him sling it. Yeah, Deshaun Brame, just record-setting tight end season. You never know. How many of these coaches are fired before early signing day, and who is the first to go? Sam Pittman, Hugh Freeze, Brent Venables, Billy Napier. How many of them are getting fired before signing day?
Well, I've already dubbed the Hugh Freeze Brent Venables showdown a loser leaves town. I don't see any way that whoever loses that game that coach is on the sidelines again the next season. But I think Pittman is probably the first to go, albeit they may dub it a retirement.
Yeah, he's not coaching there next year, no matter what happens.
Yeah.
Of those 4, I'll say 3. I'll say 3 are gone.
Wow, so you got 3. Okay.
Yeah, no, I think 3 are gone, and I don't know if I'm really ready to name the 3, but just give me 3 of the 4. Maybe one of them survives. First one to go. You think would it be Pittman or whoever loses the Hugh Freeze Brent Venables matchup?
I think Pittman's the definite of that group, but they may actually let him kind of waltz into retirement. Like quote unquote, a quiet firing.
Sure.
But if the hills are burning either in or the plains are burning in Auburn or out in Oklahoma, I think that they could actually make an in-season move at one of those 2 schools because you got DJ Durkin at Auburn, a guy who has head coaching experience. So you got a natural interim replacement, and there's several guys on OU staff that I think could qualify as well.
It just feels like, with early signing day, like you can't wait around too long. Like I feel like if you're going to move on from a coach, you have to kind of do it.
No, but what's crazy, John, and I think this plays to your Saban theory too. I think an added element to the craziness of the shadow of Nick Saban, which I don't think he's going to come back, but I think the fact that, again, the door has not been slammed shut. These schools that we're talking about here, Auburn, Oklahoma, Billy Napier, I think he's going to be able to survive. But if Florida comes open, they have championship expectations. They are going to want to hire a coach that's going to take them to the playoff. The likelihood is then they would be looking at other playoff teams as coaches, right? Well, those coaches aren't going to leave if they're in the playoff. So then you're bucking even closer up to this early signing day. So then do you have to go out of left field, so to speak, maybe a John Sumrall or one of these guys if Tulane doesn't make it, or are you making a phone call to a guy that can start immediately? He just may cost 3 times as much as any other coach.
Last one on the way out. Which politician can bench press the most?
Oh, I don't know. I saw that video. That's it. Yeah. I don't think New York cares about Mondani's bench press reps as much as they do about, you know, fixing
How
housing and transportation. But that was not a great look.
how'd that look? So he was trying to do 225 and he
Well,
crashed, or what was he trying to do?
He was trying to do
Oh.
135.
Oh no. And he crashed.
No, he didn't crash. He just needed a lot of help. It wasn't great. I don't know who can bench press the most. I mean, like, I'm not sure Trump could bench press any weight either. But he is old. He's like 70 something.
You think Zuckerberg? I don't know. Yeah, I know he's not a politician, but I feel like he kind of is. I mean, with the way Facebook controls everything and what he censors and doesn't censor.
Zuck or Elon?
I think Zuckerberg. That's why he wanted to get in the ring and fight, and Elon didn't want to. So my answer is Zuckerberg. All right, Jesse, anything else on the way out? Anything you want to get on record before week 1? Speak now or wait until week 2?
I'm stoked, man. Football's back. We're back. We're doing it. Like, subscribe to videos, Slow Mesh. John Reed's a great host. Hopefully you like our work. Continue to support the show. And we'll be back for some takes each week, man.
All right. Appreciate you, Jesse. Talk to you next week.
Yeah, man.